Balancing Act. And I want to start off by saying thank you to the Howard Thruman Center for partnering with us, and also bring up a few housekeeping matters. One, please silence your cell phones. If you need a restroom, it's through this door and to the right. And also, take as many pictures as you'd like and make sure you share on social media, because we'd like to get the word out about this wonderful event. And thank you so much for coming out tonight. So thank you, and we're going to get started, and it's going to be a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Coria. Thank you again, everyone. I'm Melanie. I'm going to be your moderator tonight. I'm also known as that lady in the yellow jacket. We have a fantastic star-studded event tonight. Look at this, folks. Look at this. Aren't these ladies beautiful? Give them a hand. We have a diagonal slice of Black female professionals in Boston, top-notch. I promise you this will be the best 90 minutes of your day, maybe even the best 90 minutes of your week. So to get started, I'm going to ask everyone to just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do. I'll start with Christella.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I'll try and turn so I'm not giving you my back. I'm Christella Guerra. I work at WBUR. I'm a senior arts and culture reporter, and my beat is race and identity. It's nice to be here.
Hey guys, my name is Bria Douglas. I am a reporter with Boston 25 News.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicole Maxey, President and CEO of Maximize PR.
Hi everyone, I'm Tiana Woodard. I'm at the Boston Globe. I'm also a Report for America core member. My beat there is Black communities and neighborhoods in Greater Boston.
Hi everyone, my name is Amaka Ubaka. I'm a morning anchor at 7 News.
Women in the media, the Balancing Act. Ladies, let me start by asking, why is work-life balance so important, and is there really a such thing as balance? Anyone can jump in.
I think work-life balance is crucial, because if you don't have work-life balance, specifically the industry that I am in, which is local news, it can really consume you. And you have to be able to unplug and uncharge from just the day-to-day tragedies that you're covering, victims of crimes or family members who have lost loved ones. Hearing their stories can be kind of draining, so you have to have kind of that outlet of things you enjoy doing outside of work to help you with your mental health and just have those sources to provide self-care for yourself. So for me personally, it's very important to have work-life balance.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what you were just saying, I think the pandemic really taught us something about that need for work-life balance. I think for me, it's kind of an ongoing process. It's kind of a struggle because you feel sometimes, your duty is to report on the news, anchor the news, tell those stories and share those stories and speak with victims or family members. But I also think that with the pandemic and a lot of people, being at home, seeing the Zooms, that space where you need to kind of cultivate for yourself, some alone time, some wellness time is super, super important. So I think over the last couple of years, I've really made an effort to focus more on my mental health, but also my physical health. And that includes, working out and finding joy by being outside and enjoying that space.
I would say that for work-life balance, I feel like it's definitely a lot easier said than done. And I think that one thing that also is important, especially for people in the media industry, is like, at least on my side as a reporter, not really just me trying to implement work-life balance, but also having a good boundaries with your editors or the people that manage you or your coworkers or the people that you're surrounding yourselves with. I think a lot of times, especially if you're working with editors who may not have as good work-life boundaries or balance, that kind of bleeds into how you operate and how you work and what balance you see fit for yourself. So I think just from the get-go, it's also important about not only doing it for yourself, but also implementing it so that people around you, people that are managing you, people that are like on the same, I guess, playing field as you horizontally, like have the same position as you, making sure that they're not overstepping on that so that you can stay true to yourself and what is an ideal work-life balance situation for yourself.
Yes. Work-life balance is extremely important. It's important to stay grounded and to create safe spaces for yourself. And exercise, for me, is the way that I create that balance in my life.
I mean, I was just going to say, if you consider that journalists are part of your community, if we're seen as members of the community, then at any given moment, I could decide to participate as a citizen or as a journalist. And so what I have a trouble with, I think, is finding myself at events that I know perhaps I may be the only reporter, and deciding, am I going to enjoy this as a member of the queer community, as a Latina person, or am I going on air, and am I going to collect sound? And a lot, especially early in my career, felt like I was running and chasing ambulances and doing stories that, you know, our field thinks is necessary. And it is a lot of tragedy. And so I think we also just have to balance, you know, if the idea of journalism, are we only covering things when they're devastating, then no one is really going to eventually feel us not relevant, but I think they're going to blame us for a lot of their own woes. If our purpose is to cover life holistically, then we're there to sort of witness it, report on it, and I think be present and be a part of it too. So I have to figure out when I'm civically engaged or when I'm journalistically engaged. That's the distinguishing remark, because it makes a difference.
And that's my next question. How do you remain cognizant, all of you, of work-life balance? Or sometimes, are you too far gone? Are you hurt? Or you're like, oh my God, I need a break? Or what barometers do you have set up so that you know when to make sure that you still have that good work-life balance?
I say no a lot, but for people who are getting into the industry, I think they try and teach you to not say no. Or they ask you to work weekends, or they ask you to work nights, and you sort of are pushed to this extent to where you feel you're burned out before you even know what burnout means. And so what I'm hoping in the process of us mentoring young journalists is that we're teaching them from the beginning that work-life balance isn't a choice. And if you want to have a sustainable industry that goes on for decades, then you can't assume that you're going to be able to go until you don't have anything more to give. You must have a way of turning off. There's no way to do it otherwise.
To jump off of that, I think especially like as all of us up here, whether we're Black, we're queer, we're Latine, like a lot of times I feel that for us, it's like we should be grateful for anything that we're given. So that's like also kind of feeding into like being able to say no for things. Like for me, I'm not even 2 years into my post-college career. So there are a lot of times where I feel that, especially people that are here further in the newsroom, whether they're editors, they kind of like see young talent as a way of like, they're grateful for anything. So they're always going to latch onto them to do like the work that people may not do, whether like want to do, whether it's like, I've worked on Thanksgiving Day, I've worked on Sunday mornings, even when I've like have not wanted to, but sometimes there's this pressure of like, you should be grateful to be here, and that every opportunity is like a blessing, but a lot of times it feeds or it kind of tears away at me. And I think one way, and I'm not perfect at this, but one way I've tried to like really implement those is like, for example, like I think on my phone, like implementing like on Slack, like I do not like check this after 5 p.m. Or if my editor calls me like at 10 p.m., I'll wake up, I'll see it at 9, I'm like, good morning, how are you? I just saw your message, I'll get to this. Like not really feeding into that, because I think one thing that like my therapist told me is that once you say yes, it's really hard to say no. Like once you open that door, it's very, very hard to close it. So whether it's like doing those things on your phone with like literally having do not disturb signals or settings placed on there, or just really like disciplining yourself to only work within the hours that you're paid. It's easier said than done, but I think some of those tools that we have like on our technology too could be really helpful in implementing and staying with that.
To piggyback off of what you guys both said, when I first started at 7 News almost 7 years ago, I was a weekend reporter, and I remember in my mind, I kind of cultivated this policy, so I would say yes, and then for every 3 yeses I would say for extra work, the 4th time I would say no. And usually by the time I said no, they don't remember that no because you've said yes so many times. But I think now, that mentality of feeling just lucky to be in the room, lucky to be here does exist in the back of your mind. And it's really, really important to say, like, no can be a complete sentence. There doesn't need to be an extra explanation. And you don't necessarily feel that way when you first are starting in the market or at a new job, of course. But over time, as you continue to work and, you turn out stories and you prove that, you're worth the hire, I feel like you gain that confidence, at least for me, I have, to say, you know what? I get up at 3 in the morning, so I'm not going to check my emails after a certain time because I have to get that sleep so that I have the energy to get through a 5-hour morning show and then do the noon show and then also take part in, community activities and things like that. On the weekends, now, so cherished because for so long I didn't have weekends to enjoy. So I have no problem now, especially on weekends, saying, I'm good. Obviously, if I'm there and there's something happening, I'm going to, let our station know. But I think cultivating that confidence to say, like, I am enough, I deserve to be in this position, and it's okay to say no isn't going to take away from your management or your boss being able to relate and saying, it's understandable. I think it's really important that you cultivate that within yourself. Over time, I think it's a balance. It's hard.
And I think one of the things that helps me with work-life balance is always understanding that work is not who I am. My identity doesn't involve me being a reporter. It's just what I do for a living. And so understanding that my worth, my value, my identity comes from, 1, being a child of God, 2, being a daughter, a friend, a sister. I'm able to kind of better separate the two. And when I'm on the clock, I'm on the clock. I'm giving it my best. And then when I'm not on the clock, I'm not getting paid to continue thinking about work. Like, yes, it's important for me to stay aware of what's happening in the world as a journalist, but you have to know kind of when to turn it off and when to just enjoy your life. So.
Does everyone know when to turn it off?
I do.
Yeah.
Everyone know when to turn it off? Amaka.
I know, I had to think about that. It just
Amaka
depends.
had to think about it.
Because you do feel, to your point, you do feel this, especially when you're the only person of color, Black woman in the room, to go the extra mile for things that aren't your responsibility, but you feel that internal responsibility to say, if I don't mention this, it may not get covered if I don't say something. And so I think it's a balance. I think it's really hard to know when to shut it off. It's definitely an ongoing process for me personally.
Knowing when it's hard, but
Yeah.
I think like times where I've really had to shut it off is when I realize that I'm choosing my work over other parts of my life that I really care about, whether it's like, oh my gosh, if I really wanted to go to this concert that I paid tickets for that is not during my work hours I really want to go to, or like my brother might be having this speaking engagement or something like that. When it's bleeding into other parts that are just as important to Tiana Woodard as are my work, that's when I know, like, okay, I really need to step back from this because, like Bria was saying, journalism isn't me, but it's something I enjoy, but it's not like what makes me.
And I think you're touching on some things, and I'll let you respond to Cole. Also, while you ladies are talking, what are maybe some warning signs that you're going too far and too hard?
I think it's kind of like just when I see it bleeding into that, but also when I'm just really fatigued or I'm not really showing up or being fully present in those other things, like whether it's like being fully present when I'm out with my friends or being fully present when I'm talking with my mom or having our chats with her being in Texas, or having to miss like things that are just as important in my life that aren't news related. When I see that I'm not like 100% in those, I think that's when I know I really need to dial it back or to really reevaluate how I view my journalism, how I view my work, and how much I'm going to let it consume me.
I think it's very important to be able to say no and not to take on more than you can chew. I have had the experience being a publicist that some people, when I do pitch to various media outlets, sometimes I do not receive an answer. And sometimes not receiving an answer is an answer. It can mean no. And that's something that I definitely have to accept. According to Psychology Today, there are 5 key areas I identified. And they are one is create space and time, practice mindfulness, journal awareness, practice listening, and gain a different perspective. And one that resonates with me is journaling, because I know at the end of the night, I take an inventory of my day, and I just go through what kind of day I had, what I would like to do better, and it's just about taking accountability for my actions.
Do you do hour by hour journal, what you did every hour, or just a summary of the day?
Just a summary, whatever thoughts come to my head, I just write them down. Thank you.
There was a point where I remember early, probably, I don't know if it was that early in my career, but probably like in my early 30s. I would get alerts for all the news. And frequently it was mass shootings. And I remember there were like 3 days where I woke up to a mass shooting, meaning that the first thing I looked at when I woke up was my phone. And I can't say that I'm necessarily better, but the alerts are off because I cover arts and culture now. And I can cover news. I mean, I've been doing this work for 17 years. I can cover whatever you want. But I don't have the responsibility, I feel, to be at the forefront of every breaking news event that's happening in the region. I pick on an annual basis the issues, the community, the areas that I want to be best versed at in my newsroom so that I'm the expert, at least where I work. And then I think I compete against myself because we get to a point even in this field where the competition of it just feels so unnecessary. Not to say that journalism doesn't need to be competitive, but there is a point where you're all covering the same thing anyway. Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe you're gonna get like the exclusive, but frankly, there was a point I even remember where there'd be a scrum of people, rugby term, trying to get the same person who is a victim of some terrible thing, and I just stepped away. Because I can't at this point. I feel like the way that we dehumanize sometimes is so inappropriate. And I'm sort of the belief that we need to completely I don't know if the word is upheaval. I just need to change the way that this field is taught so that we are not constantly sort of putting so much of the burden, especially on communities of color. I need us to do better as a field so that we're not only doing better for our journalists of color, but we're doing better by the people that we're alleging to try and represent. You know, and I think that contributes to less stress.
So you mentioned exercise. Now, how does exercise, how many of you exercise, and does that play a role? Uh-oh, she's like, sometimes. No, am I gonna lie? Am I gonna lie to Melanie?
I'm not gonna lie to you.
You're not gonna lie? Okay.
Truth.
Okay. Let's talk about exercise and physical fitness. And I know I'm a long distance cyclist, and I know when I ride after a 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80-mile ride, I feel fantastic.
You said 80 miles?
Girl, I said 80 miles.
80
I could have said 100. I could have said 100. Hundreds, maybe once a year.
Wow.
Yeah. You got to join. I have a cycling group, so you
Okay.
got to join. Actually, all of you. I'm going to recruit all of you to join my cycling group. Oh, wow. You like
We
cycling?
could try that.
Okay.
We could do that.
Audience, y'all talking about me, I'm going to recruit you all too. And you. Let's talk about physical fitness and how that helps, or if it helps, or whether or not you exercise, you don't exercise, you want to exercise more, you're just not interested.
Yeah, I think for me, fitness has been important my entire life. From when I was in middle school and, I did track and, dance and all of that. But I think now, it's not even it's my mental health. This is not a vanity thing. It's like I go to the gym because it can be sometimes the best part of my day. We talk about the stories that we have to cover in local news, particularly it was really heavy in the beginning of 2023.
Yeah.
Really heavy in January and February with some of the stories out there. And it was really important that once I got done with my day, I could decompress. And usually a workout is one of the best ways for me to have that outlet. And it doesn't have to be anything, grand. Obviously 80 miles is great cycling, but you can go for a walk, you can just take a breath, take the time to like put the phone down, don't look at the alerts, don't look at your, status updates, and just walk, bike, I do a lot of weightlifting, that's a passion of mine. So whatever it is, it's just finding that time for yourself, I think is crucial. Yeah.
Great, that's crucial. And before the next person answers, I do want to give a shout out to our people online. We know you are watching, and we want to make you, sometimes when you're online, it feels like you're not a part of the community, but we want to just bring you right in with us. So thank you for joining us. Also, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. And if anyone online has a question, you can email me at babj.nabj@gmail.com. Again, that's babj.nabj@gmail.com. And if you're online and you just joined us, if you tuned in a little late, I'm Melanie. I'm your moderator tonight. We have a diagonal slice of Black women in media, and we are talking about the balancing act. And right now, I've got the question on the table about exercise. Who's up next?
I'm ashamed to say I do not exercise. After I stopped playing basketball, the most exercise I get is from the car to the house to work. But I do understand the value of exercising and how it really can help with your mood and your energy. But yeah, that's something I have to get back into. 6 months, I have gained some weight in this Boston food scene. So yeah, I'll get on that. But
I can say that I recently hired a trainer. So every Wednesday at 7:30 a.m., I'm up with my trainer. And actually, I have to drop my little guy off at the bus stop at 6:30. So by 6:45, I'm at the gym. So it helps that I'm out the house because I drive right back. I drive by the gym to get home, so I just have to pull into the parking lot and go. So.
Okay, anybody else?
I was laughing too much at the beginning, so I know I definitely don't have much to say. I have noticed that when I have worked out, I've felt so much better starting my day, so I definitely need to get more back into it for sure. I have no excuse. Like, my apartment complex has a gym and everything, and I guess this will be on the record that I will hold myself accountable and do more soon.
Audience, did you hear that? The people watching? You not only have the people in the room, we got people online watching, and then it's going to be on YouTube, and then they're going to watch, and then they're going to start emailing you.
On the record.
Did you work out today? Did you work out
My
today?
mom's probably watching too, so she'll keep me accountable.
My mom's watching too, from Florida. I like yoga, and I like cycling. I'm not cycling 80 miles, but I will definitely do it in the North Shore. There's a bunch of bike trails, and I think nature, movement. My grandmother loved to walk. Walking was a way she would clear her head, and I've adopted it. Especially in the middle of the day when you're just you have writer's block, you can't get through a story, and a lot of us are working from home. So I think I used to leave the newsroom. Now I'm just sort of going down my street. And sometimes I like punching things. Boxing helps. I used to do it more. The old Globe building on Morrissey, when I worked there, had a gym in the basement that smelled like sweat and ink. It was like a very newspapery kind of weird spot, and that a lot of people go down there to punch stuff when they have a day.
All right, let me clarify also. I also have a beginner group that we do not do 80 miles. It's a leisure beginner 2-hour ride. We stop, we laugh, we have fun, we ride. We stop, we laugh, we have fun, we ride. So we'll get you in the beginner group. Going back to the work-life balance, usually when this topic comes up, it's women. It's always women. Men are never involved. Mm-hmm. Why do men need to be involved? What can they do to help? And why is it always women? Uh-oh. What was that in the audience?
When you said what can men do, they start laughing.
Oh boy. Okay. What can men do? What can men do to help with this? Because it's not clearly it's an everybody thing.
Nothing?
Nothing?
I don't really need it.
Okay.
I mean, I think, sort of bust open the binary. I don't abide by like sort of female, male. My colleagues can definitely uplift one another, right? Like we had a team lunch today that was the most invigorating thing we've had all year because we never see each other. So, I guess to not make it so gendered, I just sort of need to know that, like, if someone's having a rough day and they can't handle the breaking news, I've got it, and vice versa. My team happens to be mostly femme, mostly queer. It's the first time I've ever really worked mostly with women, you know, and I identify as she and they. So I think it just depends on the day. I remember in the past, there was a feeling often that, like, women shouldn't be sent to certain things. Or my mom early in my career would be upset if they were sending me to, like, a homicide past 10 o'clock. And she wondered if they should send a guy. But realistically, you know, the field is what it is. And sometimes you find yourself in hard situations, you know. So ideally you're in a group or you're with a photographer. But, I mean, men can do whatever they want. I'm happy for whatever they want to contribute.
Kind of to piggyback off of that, I think the key is just in general, before you speak, just take a breath and think. Because I know, especially I work really early in the morning, you know, people kind of let things flow out of their mouth and they're not even thinking, okay, when I'm walking into this space, how is this person feeling? Did you say good morning? You know, like, let's just start there. So I think sometimes it's just about, whether you're, you know, a man or a woman or however you identify, it's about being kind to yourself and also just thinking before you speak. I think sometimes just word vomit comes out, and depending on what comes out can really shape, for a lot of people, the response that you get back, which can totally change the mood in your newsroom or what you're dealing with for the day. It's like, somebody could snap at me, it had nothing to do with me. I'm like, well, wait, why are you taking it out on me? So I think it's just taking a step back in general and just thinking before you speak helps to start there. Yeah.
And that's where I'm going next, is to the office. Has anyone been involved in microaggressions at work as a Black person? And how did you handle it? And we've got a lot of students in here today. How would you suggest that students handle it, or somebody who's graduating this year, they're going into the workplace, and they may have never have been involved in a microaggression. They may not even know what a microaggression is.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt, maybe to a fault. So I'm sure there's been times where I have experienced microaggressions, but I second guess myself, like, they didn't mean it that way, or I'm taking it the wrong way, or
Should we stop doing that?
I think so, because I think for me, it's probably putting other people's feelings before my own and maybe not wanting to make them uncomfortable. And I don't want to necessarily come across as, oh, I'm being too sensitive or I'm overthinking. But I know in those moments when I hear a microaggression, how it makes me feel, but I'm not always 100% certain that it is that, or I'm just like overthinking it. So that's kind of, I think, my experience with microaggressions. But I think we have to honor our feelings and recognize, regardless of how they meant it, if it makes us feel a certain way, we probably should address it, just to create an understanding of where each other is coming from in the workplace.
I just want to say, Bria, your feelings are valid. You know,
Thank you.
if you feel that way, they're definitely valid. I've been in that situation on a corporate level, and it's just best to communicate. I remember covering for someone. They went on vacation, they came back, and they had duplicated efforts. A lot of things were thrown up in the air, and I just spoke to that person. Number one, I said, I'm not going to cover for you anymore, but but I just communicated that they hired intelligent people here, and I know what I'm doing, and this is how we can work together, move forward. But it's best to communicate your feelings, you know, in a professional manner.
I think, you know, we all nodded vigorously when you asked if we'd experienced microaggressions. My advice for students is you're going to experience that. I think over time, you have to gain confidence. And in order to gain confidence, you have to be proficient in what you're doing first. So whether you're a writer, whether you're a storyteller, whether you're on air, you're on radio, you're a newspaper writer, focus on the craft, do well, be proficient, you know, make sure that, you know, your boss trusts your work, first of all. And then when you do that, you're going to gain the confidence to tackle the microaggressions that may come your way. At least that's been my experience. So I know that I've worked now 7 years in the market, started as a weekend reporter, then became a weekend anchor. Now I'm the morning anchor. And so, yeah, I do deal with microaggressions, but now I have the confidence in the ability of my job to say no. And I think the key, once you gain that confidence, is you have to stop it in the moment. Because if you let it proceed, it's like that whole take it into the given. It'll continue. And it's hard. It is hard to look your coworker or someone you work with every day in the eye and say, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you after work, or I need to pull you aside about this. But it's so crucial, because as hard as that moment is, once you nip it in the bud, you're going to feel so much better. A lot of times there is that misunderstanding where they didn't mean it to be a certain way, and so you're having that conversation. And I think overall, it's going to clear your mind, and it's not going to affect your work in the future, because you're going to constantly replay those moments in your mind, like, well, was it what I thought it was? Why did they say this? Why did they do that? So if you confront the situation in real time, I think it's going to make your life easier down the line. But I think first, for students and people who are seeking work, you have to be skilled at whatever you're pursuing and gain the confidence to even tackle those microaggressions, because they are going to exist in the world. And I think in order to stand up for it and to stand up for yourself and your feelings, you have to feel that confidence to do it inside and out, which happens over time. At least that's been my experience.
Also, staying in the office, sometimes women are labeled as emotional. She's like, yeah. We're emotional, and then, if there's a story that happens, and there's been a lot of, let's say, these school shootings or black on black crime, and your colleagues are looking at you saying, oh my God, there she goes again. Have you been in that experience? Have you had that experience? And how should students deal with it, or how do you deal with it to make sure you're not labeled as emotional?
I sort of just take the label. They can say whatever they want. When it comes down to it, the strengths that I bring to the room has nothing to do with how thick my skin is. Actually, I think, frankly, after 17 years, what makes me a good journalist, and the reason that some people will talk to me and not others, is because I meet them where they are. And so that's the mythology of journalism being some industry that requires you to harden versus potentially softening. And I think it's unfortunate, because I have colleagues that are good at all kinds of things, right? Like I have, like, this is a sort of funny thing, but like I remember there was a Sunday, and the two other reporters happened to be white men, but I knew that they were well versed from a cultural standpoint, that we could cover whatever that day, and they would be checking in with me, and we would be tackling the story from a place of a human-centered focus. If there is someone who survived something, how are we approaching? Conversations about how to knock on the door. Conversations about how to approach a mother who just lost a kid. You don't know what's coming on a Sunday. Sundays could be anything. But personally, I think, again, in the evolution of this industry, whatever patriarchal tones we've had in the past, ultimately, I think approaching people and meeting them where they are makes us more trustworthy. Versus in the past, not giving people agency, talking as journalists from ivory towers, and dictating their stories to them, right? So if we allow them to tell their own narrative and they start crying, I cry with people. And I've been told not to cry with people. I've been told to do all kinds of things that seem so asinine and stupid, because they're the complete opposite of being human, and then the person does not trust you later, right? Frequently it happened, I think, if we're mixing microaggressions with tragedy, the discomfort I've had with editors after the death of a trans woman of color differs. Early in my career, my editor didn't want me to cover it because he thought it was a freakish thing. And I did it anyway, and then they thought I was biased because I was gay. Later in my career, in a recent death of a very prominent figure in the trans community was murdered, my editor approached me with empathy and said, we'd like you to do this because you have the context and we know you will do it well. We'd also like to give you the choice because we know you know this person personally, and this is not going to be an easy story for you to tell. And the difference in approach is amazing, right? That's 10 years different. So I think we're changing as an industry, but I'm emotional as hell. It's fine.
Agreed.
You said go ahead, you can clap. I believe you said you identified as queer. Did you say that? Yeah. So let's talk about that, since you brought it up.
Sure.
If there's maybe somebody who's watching, or a journalist who's maybe getting ready to graduate, who is also queer, what advice would you give them? Clearly be themselves, but what else would you tell them? Or what is something you learned now that you didn't know 17 years ago or 15 years ago?
So much. And my mom is actually watching, so I'm very happy about that. She's
Hey,
in,
Mom. She's
in
doing a great job.
She's in Lake Worth, Florida. Early in my career, I thought being objective meant being assimilating into a newsroom. Thus, people did not know necessarily that I was an immigrant. People did not know that I was struggling with my sexuality, that I was coming out of the closet. I was raised in an evangelical church. I had a lot of self-loathing. It was very hard. And I didn't allow them to know that because the way I saw it to be a good journalist is sort of to make yourself this like carte blanche, right? But literally what it means is that as journalists of color in newsrooms, we are basing our objectivity on a standard of complete whiteness. And there's no room for you to move. You box yourself into such an extent that the only people I'm comparing myself to that sort of lived up to my idea of success were white men, generally speaking. And they were sort of, for some reason, it was like a white guy in a trench coat, like a super serious white man who'd been in a newsroom for like 40 some odd years, like a very serious journalist. And it's just so absurd because, again, when they would send me into situations where people spoke a different language, where people looked a different way, when it came down to it, there was a certain level of comfort I knew they had with me, and I seemingly always felt the need to emphasize my own objectivity. When, first of all, objectivity is a myth. Second of all, as journalists, we are called to be transparent and accountable both to the public and ourselves. And I think when it came down to it, part of that within my queerness is to tell someone, I was writing about a young queer woman, that I'm queer, right? Does that change the way that she relates to me as a reporter? Of course. Does it change that I'm a Latino journalist covering the border? I was in the fall. I was in Juarez and El Paso. Yes, it affects it. I speak their language. And so, instead of denying the parts of ourselves that make us uniquely individual, we were basically trying to white ourselves out for a long time. And so within that, my queerness was completely erased up until I really couldn't erase it. And so I would say my 20s were understanding why these things are my strength and why I walk into a room and I immediately sort of list the things I am. But second of all, like in my 30s, my journalism is 10 times better. How could it not be? It must be, because I'm going deeper within myself and I'm going deeper with the subject.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. What does an anti-racist newsroom or workplace look like?
One that pays everyone equally. One that pays.
Start there.
I think that's one of the big things. I think first, like with pay, and I think one that also just really atones for the sins that it's had against like different communities over time, like one that really not only like recognizes that, but is also actually not just saying like, okay, let's pat ourselves on the back for like recognize all that we've done, but what are you doing to move forward and to be anti-racist? Whether it's like at the Globe, I think we still have long way to go, but I think just like institutions like across the country have a long way of going to be anti-racist. And I think that there's like a lot of things, and I think that we're still figuring out what an anti-racist newsroom looks like, but definitely paying everyone equally and being transparent at that pay is the start of that, I would say.
I think to add on to that is to listen. Let's just start there. I mean, we talk about, our experiences and feeling, questioning, am I really feeling what I'm feeling? Was it a microaggression? What was that? And it's like, for my white counterparts, it's just listening to people of color and what they have to say, because in doing so, that reinforces that you're paying attention and that you care. And I also think for, people of color realizing that it's not our responsibility to explain the harm that has been caused by so many different policies, racist policies in this country over, generations. It's not our responsibility in our newsrooms to explain that harm and how to fix it. And I feel like we do sometimes feel that in different ways. But I think that those two important things are important in an anti-racist newsroom.
I also think an anti-racist newsroom is a newsroom that, kind of like what you were saying, makes Black employees feel seen and heard, like we have value, like we bring something to the table, that we have something to contribute, not feeling less than or inferior or insignificant. And I also think an anti-racist newsroom is a newsroom where Black employees can feel comfortable bringing stories to the table that affect Black communities, underserved communities, disenfranchised communities, and being careful in the narrative that we present when we are talking about these communities with our language and just how we're relaying issues that affect Black people to our viewers. So it's really just being, I think, seen and feeling seen and heard, and that our voices matter. Our presence is just as valuable as our counterparts in the newsroom.
Alrighty, our presence is just as valuable as our counterparts in the newsroom. What advice would you give to, well, two questions here. What advice would you give to graduates who are graduating this year, who are starting their first job? And also, what about somebody who may be feeling unsupported, if that graduate or somebody who's been in the workforce for several years? What advice would you give somebody who's feeling unsupported?
I would say it's important for the graduate to listen and also obtain a mentor, locate a sponsor, find someone that's going to support you, that you can run ideas by. That's very important.
And I think college graduates who are wanting to specifically get into the news business, I think you have to know what your why is. Like, if you just want to get into the business because you think TV is glamorous and it's glitzy, you're going to get burned out fast, because in reality, when you're first starting out, you're spending 8 hours a day for 2 minutes on TV. And so your why has to be bigger than just wanting to be on TV. It should be about something deeper than that, because there's going to be stressful days, there's going to be hard days, and if it's just about being on TV, you're not going to last. So it really has to be something more meaningful that you want to get into this business for.
Agreed. And to kind of piggyback off of that, I mean, my first job was in Northern California. I was making $19,000 a year when the economy was not great. And yeah, you know, you're MMJing, multimedia journalist, so you are editing, you are writing everything, you are shooting everything, and then you're going live, you're running around. It's extremely difficult. And so if you don't know that why, you really won't last, because so many years later, I mean, we see it in the industry. There's, you know, layoffs at newspapers, people are getting out of the industry because they maybe don't feel like they have the work-life balance, or the money isn't there. So you really have to be passionate about the work and why you're doing it. And also, I think it's very easy for graduating students to feel this sense of like worry or anxiety about their next move. And I would just want to reassure you that you don't have to have it figured out on day one. I mean, I'm 10 plus years into this industry and I'm still trying to figure it out. So just know your first job, your second job, you're gonna make mistakes. Making mistakes is gonna make you grow, and it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You can kind of learn as you go and know that in the long run, you will be okay and you will figure it out. So that would be my advice.
And one other thing, take advantage of internships, because that can let you know if you even want to get into the business to begin with. Is just like interning in a newsroom, seeing the day-to-day operation, what it takes. Because I've seen interns who, after their internship, they don't even want to be in news anymore. So whatever it is you guys are wanting to pursue, find an internship, and that'll really give you that hands-on experience prior to getting into the workforce.
Before I go on to my next question, the folks online, if you're joining us, I'm Melanie, I'm your moderator, and we're talking about women in the media, work-life balance, and we've got a great panel here, great diagonal cross-section of Black female women professionals here in Boston. And if you have a question, you want to email me at babj.nabj@gmail.com. Again, that's babj.nabj@gmail.com. We're going to go into questions probably in about 5-10 minutes, so send them on over. And anyone in the audience, we're going to have somebody coming around with a microphone to answer so that you can ask your questions. So for people who are feeling unsupported in the workplace, I'm hoping a mentor, I'm assuming a mentor is probably somebody good for them. And how do they find a mentor?
I think for me, a lot of times, like finding a mentor, like unfortunately, like there are some people that'll go out of their way to reach out to you or to take you by the hand. But a lot of times, like especially if you're in internships or at jobs, really what you get out of it is what you put into it. So I would really just say like going out of your comfort zone and finding people who just, whether it's like reading their work or just seeing where they've been and what they've done and just going up to them. Like I've never had an experience where I went up to someone and was like, I would really love to like get coffee with you or ask you about this or that. No one has ever told me no, absolutely, like I don't want anything to do with you. If they ever do say that, that's not the mentor for you, but I'm absolutely positive it's never going to happen to you. Everyone in journalism, I think, is really, they want to nurture the next generation and for them to grow and for them to have a fruitful experience there. So I really think it is just going about and seeing, like, going in your newsroom or going in the space and seeing people that you can see pieces of yourself in or what you would like to be, or like whether like someone that really like intrigues you, just going up to them, really like just sharing, not like an elevator pitch, but just like asking them for a few seconds of their time or just scheduling something, I really think goes a long way. It's not really about them reaching out to you, but you have to be just as ambitious about going out and seeking those people. And I would say, like, in addition to mentors, sure, like it's important to like look up, but I think it's also important to have a network like horizontally or peers per se, like whether it's like I have like a group chat of people who are around my age in different newsrooms where we kiki about different things, and those are the people that where I'm like, oh my god, I don't know if I want to be in journalism anymore. These are the people that like kind of pull me aside, whether it's just like they're like really giving me pep talks or talking about a story that I did that I may not feel good about, but them like really seeing the benefits of it or seeing the good parts of it, or just like having some people to relate to you on that same like level is just as important, or I'd say even more important, rather than just trying to climb that like ladder or trying to reach up to like people that are above you in the hierarchy or per se. Just always like reaching out for those people who are on the same level as you, because they'll always remember like those partnerships, those relationships when you're somewhere up the ladder eventually, if that makes sense.
I think the other thing to piggyback off of that is be realistic about your ask for a potential mentor. So if you send an email or you're trying to call them, just be very clear about what your expectations are. You know, for us in television, do you want us to look at your 10-minute reel and give you feedback on what you think needs to be improved? Are you looking for someone to call you once a month and talk about some of the, you know, stresses and frustrations of the job? Just be very clear in your ask, because we talk about work-life balance, and I think for those of us maybe wanting to support people and, you know, be mentors, just be very cognizant about what the ask is. And I also think don't be afraid that like someone is too big for you to like respond to. I remember in my first couple of markets, I mean, I emailed top 10 reporters, you know, people who were like big names, and they responded. And I was shocked that they even gave me the time of day. But don't feel like, oh, they wouldn't, you know, they don't know who I am, they won't respond. You'd be surprised who will give their time to, you know, someone who wants to do what they want to do and explains it and is coherent about it. I mean, most people, like you were saying, want to help.
Right, they all started somewhere.
They do. We all remember that feeling of starting out in the industry. It's really difficult. So if you're still in it and you're passionate about it, don't ever feel like someone is too big of a name to approach or email or contact.
Shoot your shot.
Yes, always.
I would definitely piggyback off of that and just say be patient as well. You know, wait for a response. And, you know, sometimes we see people and we admire them, you know, give them a compliment, start a conversation. You know, you want to be very organic and you want to be transparent.
And going back to the work-life balance, Tiana, you mentioned something that you see a therapist.
Yes.
So how did that come about? And how often do you see a therapist? How did it start? And do you recommend it for anyone?
Yes, I recommend it for everyone. I think everyone would benefit from whether it's having a therapist, or I know therapy is inaccessible for everyone. So whether it's just having someone to talk to, a life coach, a counselor, or like some like therapy groups or like groups with people like from different affinity groups. Absolutely. I started seeing, I think, a therapist when I was, I think, 15 in high school, but that wasn't continuous from time to time. I just started seeing a therapist when I just came to Boston, where when I first came, I was working remotely. I was starting my first job out of college. I was all alone, and my mental health it kind of tanked when I got here. So I found like a Black woman therapist that I found through like the Therapy for Black Girls Network. And I've been seeing her for about 2 years. And it's just been great to have someone that not only like, who kind of like sees me through this, like they only like know so much about me, or they're kind of removed from my life, but also they hold me really accountable to the goals that I have and the things that I see for myself. So I would recommend it. And I would also say that like for therapy, it's kind of like whether it's like internships or like dating, like you're not gonna be with the therapist. Your first therapist isn't the perfect one for you. And a lot of times it's about trial and error. Some therapists may work for you, some may not. Like I think this is my 4th therapist since starting therapy when I was 15. So it kind of is just like shopping around and seeing what works. But I would definitely recommend it for anyone who does have the emotional and especially financial capacity to do that in their lives.
Yeah, I think I'm on my third therapist since being in like my 20s, and usually it was at moments of transition, moves, breakups, family upheaval. Like there were instances that were specific that I knew I needed to talk to somebody, and then this therapist knew this person is also a journalist, and so she, at least my current therapist, knows that when news is up, if I come in and I'm just worked up and I need to talk through something from work, it's a very specific kind of therapy. It's not, sometimes it feels very, it's odd to talk to like, almost like civilians about journalistic work. Sometimes journalistic work feels like something not everybody is gonna understand, especially stuff like that could end up causing levels of PTSD or, therapy is necessary, I think, for the work that we do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it is during moments of transition, because I don't currently see a therapist, but when I was working in Orlando several years ago, I was seeing a therapist. And it was kind of a moment of transition where I took a break from the industry. And I think that's important too, is to kind of know your limits, and like it's okay to take a step back. Mm-hmm. People will make you feel like you have to go, go, go and kind of reach this ladder of success. I put that in air quotes, but like, what is that? What does that look like for you, right? It's individual for all of us. So I think it's important to take that step back when you feel like, okay, I just need a break. And so when I was seeing that therapist, it was during a moment of a lot going on in Orlando. I was a multimedia journalist there as well. So it's a pretty big market. It's a pretty competitive market. And I was running around doing breaking news. And it was just, I reached my limit and I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. This isn't even worth it. And so I left news for about a year. I quit my job. I left the industry, got out of my contract 6 months early, which is very interesting because they'll tell you, don't break your contract. You can't break your contract. They're going to come after you with lawyers. They're going to do all those things. And that never happened to me. I went to my general manager. I went to my news director, and I just said, I need a break. This isn't it for me right now, and I'm going to just get out of the industry. And so I did that. That was 2015, and I worked in PR for a year, actually, at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and decided that wasn't for me, and I got back into news a year later. But I just think it's important to take the time for yourself. And I remember when I was doing that, people were like, you can't leave the industry, you're not going to be able to get back in, you're going to develop a bad reputation for yourself because you can't break your contract. You can't say no. And if you believe those things, you're going to be stuck. You're going to feel like, well, I just have to keep going and put myself in these situations that don't work for me. And that was far from the case. My experience was the exact opposite. I spent a year out of the industry, got an agent, my first agent that I'd ever had, and I got 2 top 10 market offers in Dallas and Boston, after everyone told me that that was impossible. So just don't believe the naysayers. Take the time. If you have, you have to work on your mental health or whatever you're pursuing, take the time for you and don't listen to people that will tell you otherwise, because they don't know your journey. They don't know your experience or what you're going through. So don't let them define your expectations and what you need for your own mental and physical health too.
Thank you for that. That's you lead me into my next question. They don't know your journey. They don't know what you're going through. 2 more comments. 1 comment, 1 question, actually. Suicide. You know, something we don't talk about often. And as I was going through my questions and deciding what I talk about, I said, I should talk about this. You know, if you're ever feeling low or burnt out, it's going to get better. You know, like Amaka said, she took a break. She took a break. So suicide is not the answer. There's plenty of resources out there. The suicide hotline is 988. And also, if you have a friend or someone you know that says they're feeling depressed or they're not feeling well, just ask them, say, hey, you know, are you suicidal? Or, you know, let's get together, let's talk, because they might be, and they may not tell you. They may not want you to know. They may not come out and tell you unless you ask them. So I just want to take a little bit of time to let you know there's always another answer. Like Amaka said here, she was burnt out, she took a break. Ladies, one final question before we go into questions from the audience, and I have a good one here already on email. What do you do for fun, and what do you do to recharge?
For me, my faith helps me recharge. I pray, I go to church. It's what helps me it keeps me grounded, and it keeps me motivated to do what I do. Outside of that, I enjoy anything basketball. I mean, that's kind of an escape for me. I enjoy going to the movies, sleep, reading. So that's the way I choose to like unwind.
Is that March Madness basketball, pro ball, or playing
Absolutely,
basketball?
March Madness basketball. This is my favorite time of year. Yes, March Madness all day.
Okay, who's going to take home the prize?
For the women, South Carolina. For the men, I'm thinking UConn.
UConn, okay. All right, let's see if you're definitely South Carolina. We'll see if UConn comes through. All right, next. Nicole?
Me, definitely my faith and travel. I enjoy traveling. I took my 10-year-old and my niece daughter to South Africa last year for a wedding on a yacht, and it was amazing. Most recently, I returned from Grenada, and I've never been there. It was absolutely beautiful. Went there for a woman's retreat, so it was meditation and hiking. It was absolutely amazing. Definitely travel. That's my way.
I love it. I love it. South Africa, Grenada.
Yes.
Agreed. Vacationing is key, I think. It's the way I recharge. Hiking as well. I love to hike. I usually go up to New Hampshire, the White Mountains, or Blue Hills, the Fells, whatever it is. I love hiking and then vacationing. And I think the other thing about the vacations is, let me say, I feel like whether, you know, you take those breaks, like take the breaks. And I've noticed, you know, when you work in a newsroom, sometimes people can be super gossipy and they're like, oh, she barely works. She's on another vacation. Like, what? But it's so funny the way that our society works, right? We overwork ourselves, and people say, well, that's the expectation. But when you go on vacation, everyone says, well, you're going on too many vacations. So do you do what you need to do to recharge, whether it's your faith? For me, it's vacation, being outdoors, hiking, and don't worry about, you know, maybe people having opinions about it.
I like cooking. There was something, so a few years ago, my grandmother, well, both of my grandmothers passed in the last 3 years. One was 95, she was in Panama. I'm Panamanian. The other recently passed at 92. Both my grandmothers cooked. And there's something about maybe in the isolation of the pandemic, we're all home, you know, and I was grieving. And I felt like my grandmother was right there with me, and that there was rest in that, because I was trying to figure out, first of all, how do we do journalism from like indoors? You know, it was this period just before June of 2020 when we suddenly all were surrounded by 10,000 people. And I just distinctly remember sort of finding this peace that I hadn't really found previously in my field, where I would just be by myself in my kitchen in the evenings, and I felt like my abuela was there too. And it was a start of a shift, I guess, because all of a sudden we're all being challenged to think maybe working ourselves to death isn't the life. Right. Maybe we change our perspective on what work means and how necessary it is. Both my parents, my mom's a nurse, my dad's a pediatrician. So during COVID, that was extremely stressful. And I just sort of reconfigured like the walks, the cycling. I love traveling too, if I can, right? Like it's just an opportunity to get outside of your head. You know, I'm a ruminator. I think a lot, too much. So what stops my mind? And that nature helps. Just being outside and getting outside of sort of the hum of sort of the day-to-day. Yeah.
One day I will travel like you guys once I get my post-grad finances together. For me, I really love crocheting. Right now I'm crocheting a baby blanket for my brother's niece that I'm expecting in May, so I'm really excited about that. I really love genealogy. Like I will spend like hours just like tracing back my family's like ancestry, using the records and just the oral histories that we have. That's something that I do in my spare time. I really love like Korean dramas, animes, like stop animation. Yeah, and I love napping when I get a nap. That's a hobby that I think that more people should invest in.
Napping is great.
Thank you for that. We've got a couple of online questions. We've got some good ones, ladies. How did you get comfortable with showing up as your authentic self with your hair? Because clearly we all know there was a time in media where, you know, you had to be straight, straight, straight.
I think for me personally, my news directors have made me feel comfortable. I have been able to wear my hair the way I want to wear it, and it hasn't been an issue, at least that I've heard of. The only time it was an issue was actually my very, very first job in TV, which was in El Dorado, Arkansas. I wore box braids, and the news director said she would not hire me with box braids. So I had to do like flat iron. But other than that, I mean, this was years ago, but other than that, I think this industry is progressing, and it's moving forward in just like accepting all hairstyles. And so I haven't had any issues.
I love that. I love your hair, and I love that you represent. I think we could do better in Boston, seeing that, and that includes not me, but everyone, in showing that visual representation for young people in particular. I think that's a tough one, because I struggled with that for a long time. In the beginning of my career, we had consultants who would review our tape, our reel. Most of these consultants were not people of color. A lot of them were men, and they would say, you know, you need to straighten your hair. So I wore wigs for years. This is a weave, but when I came here, I was wearing wigs, and it ruined my hair. It really did. And so I think it's been a journey and an evolution. And I just wore braids on air for the first time last year, and that was a process. And thank you. I was super proud of that, because I understand, like, particularly at home and being an anchor in the market, there's not many Black women that are anchors, or people of color that are in that position, and it means something. It means something not only to myself, but young women and girls and families. And I think also the Crown Act passing last year was like, yes, okay. I mean, we knew it was okay. We knew it was, you know, but when Maya and Deanna Cook led the way with that, and it actually being signed into law. I think Massachusetts was the 18th state that had passed it. So incredible, because it really kind of just solidifies what we already know about Black hair and different textures of hair. It doesn't matter. It grows out of my head, and I should be able to wear it how I want to. So I think it's an ongoing process, though. I mean, there's still work to do, but yeah.
Anyone else?
I guess, like, fortunately for me, I'm very new to this industry post-grad. I've only been for it like about 2 years, and I've been very blessed and thankful to say that I've never had any experiences where I've had to change my hair. I think for me personally, it's kind of been like an internalized like process of me growing up having permed my hair for 13 years straight, and me personally like having the self-confidence and having the self-confidence and the self-esteem to really like wear my hair as it is. So more so than I think than the industry telling me what is okay than what's okay. I think it's been a lot of like societal issues and a lot of things with like my upbringing and how I grew up wearing my hair that's really, I guess, pushed me back from doing that. But thankfully, the Globe or no one has done that for me, and I feel really sad hearing all of these like personal stories that you guys have had. But it's getting better, it seems, just even in the few years of me not experiencing it. I hope that anyone that comes through here after me doesn't have to experience like anything like this either.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I'm going to give you the next question, and then I'm going to give the email address out to those watching online so you can think about this. How did you balance time for finding love and building relationships with your career? So hold on, hold your thoughts. Folks, if you're just joining us online, we're taking questions now. You can email me your question at babj.nabj@gmail.com. All right, ladies, how did you balance finding time for love and relationships?
I haven't found love, so I can't say nothing about that.
Ditto.
Okay.
Single, ready to mingle.
I'm a queer cliche. My partner lives in Texas, so we are long distance. We see each other as frequently as we can. She's a beautiful 8-year-old son, and it's going really well.
What's queer cliche?
A lot of like queer women find themselves in these like cross-country relationships, and I don't know why we do it because it's hard, but it's seemingly, it's great. It's my first, like I would say, like serious long distance. Like we're committed to seeing each other at least twice a month if possible. So the travel is happening, and the points are coming, and I'm trying to work the airline points.
And you said, what did you call her at the end? She's Arrow something. What did you say at the end about her?
I don't know.
She was an.
Oh, she has an 8-year-old son.
Oh, she's got an 8-year-old
Yeah,
son.
she has an
Okay,
8-year-old
kind
son,
of.
and so
Okay.
thus, like, I am probably the one traveling. I just have 2 cats, right? So, like, it's easier for me. She's a mom, right? So we took him camping this past month, and it's just lovely. It's really beautiful. I'm very happy.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, there's one person with love on the stage.
But this field is not easy to have a relationship. I mean, that's just true. Like I remember getting into the industry and there was a lot of married couples, like in journalism, as if journalists we can only sort of put up with each other.
Right.
Like we are a very specific kind of people.
Any questions from the audience? Any questions from the audience? Corey, do you want to? You know what? Do you want to come up? You want to walk up? I can. I was going to say, you can just grab the microphone.
Okay, I just popped in a cough drop, so excuse me. But hi, thank you so much, first and foremost, for talking to us. I really enjoyed the conversation. So my name is Destiny. I'm a international relations major. I forgot the word. Here at BU, but the majority of my background is in creative writing, and I picture myself venturing into a kind of cultural critic, kind of almost journalistic field. However, this is kind of a horrifying time to be a journalist. I think that from at least a Gen Z kind of burgeoning perspective, I think that I definitely feel like the value of writers altogether is definitely endangered, and definitely has gone down. And media literacy is definitely really, really bad right now. So I guess my main question for you guys as like working professionals in this industry is what you guys see as the future for this industry and how to navigate this kind of not very hopeful landscape. Thank you. Okay.
So, yeah? Okay. So I graduated from college in 2007. It was just before I think the Great Recession of the time. And there were, I think, the same, if not more, layoffs and furloughs industry-wide at the time, to the point that the majority of my classmates didn't find work, I think, within the first 2 years of our graduating. I think I found a job within about a year. I went to FIU in Miami, and I found a job in Fort Myers, Florida, at a mid-sized paper. And I had an offer from a job, to your point, no moving, Texas, Beaumont, 28K, working as an immigration reporter. If anybody offers you a job as an immigration journalist out of college, you need to ask them for money and to understand the kind of support they're going to give you. So it's a moment where, like, there's a lot of opportunity, unfortunately, because they just laid off a ton of expensive people. They're lacking institutional knowledge, they're lacking infrastructure, and they're attempting to fill some C-suite positions across the board that I don't fully understand, as if we need any more hierarchy in the newsrooms in general. So the problem is there's work, but you need to make sure that you're not taken advantage of and that you value yourself enough to say no. Because I said no to that job in Texas, and she said, you know you're not going to get a better offer. And then I knew I was right. And everybody I met in that newsroom was completely miserable. So the thing is, you're a needed, your talent is necessary, and your vision is needed. And for cultural commentary right now, brilliant. Very few people know how to do that well. So I think very much know your worth and value yourself enough to wait and give yourself an opportunity. You know, jump for opportunities that you see as like great. Don't assume you're going to be there 10 years, right? Most of my friends jumped jobs every 2. A lot of them are at some of the major newspapers, and they're worried, right? NPR just had layoffs, and they lost a ton of queer POCs. So it doesn't totally make sense to me the way the industry claims that they want this kind of talent, but then they take a risk on it, and then when the audience isn't there, they get rid of it. So what I'm saying is come in and then eventually be in charge. Stay long enough to head it. You know, like I'm good with that. I think that they need to be, at this point, like we need to sort of be running this business.
Melanie, I would just like to say that it's important to be able to pivot and utilize your skills, maximize your skills.
Yeah.
My niece daughter's visiting me, and she sent me an article today that's important to change jobs every 2 years. I was like, yeah, you know, you're young, so it's okay for you to do that. I want to say that that's one reason why I'm in PR, that I am a publicist, because I chose to do something a little bit different. And if there's anyone here, I know there are students, I'm definitely, you know, building my team. What we do is we write press releases and we pitch them to the media. And so we are oftentimes creating stories. And I pride myself on being a BIPOC publicist, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, and I work within the community that I live in. So if you're interested, please let me know. Thanks.
Any other questions? Other questions from the audience?
Do you need the mic?
Hello, my name is Maria. I am a junior studying public relations, and I'm originally from Atlanta. And one of the things that I kept thinking about as I was hearing you all speak is how, just reflecting on my own experience growing up, and like many other people here can relate, we pushed ourselves so like much during high school to get to the places where we are now. And even in college, there's still this theme where we're overworking ourselves, but we're hearing from people like, no, take time to yourself, journal, do this and that. But at the same time, it feels like, there's this question of like, what are we doing collectively to uphold ourselves to actually taking care of each other and giving ourselves the structure and the space to really have access to like the opportunities to do so. Of course, I think it's important to consider being happy in your career, but what are we doing to also consider like our own happiness as a community and like really give people space to live up to that, to actually like take care of ourselves. And so that's just one thing that I wanted to ask you all. Thank you.
So just to verify, is your question around how journalism can contribute to sort of collective healing, or is the question around like how newsrooms can contribute to their employees, you know, doing better about healing themselves?
I think that my question was more so like as we move on in a career.
Grab the mic.
Thank you. I think it was more generalized. I know that like media careers do tend to be like more heavy as we interact with so many different stakeholders in our life that come from different backgrounds, and we all carry things with us in ourselves. But just in general, like when we're told to take a step away, that we have the space, like how do we actually like genuinely do this and not get like criticized by our peers, and how can we genuinely care for each other in the field and make sure that we're truly okay and that we can actually make full use of our resources. Because I think a lot of companies and different businesses, like they have like, and they always claim to have resources for us that we can always access, but how can we make sure that we're not like made to feel guilty when we access these resources? And how can we like really emphasize the fact that we are here as a community to support each other and actually like not feel guilty about using our resources, basically.
I think you just have to do what's best for you and not worry about what other people think or what they're going to say. It's your life. You know what you need, you know what you want, and you can't live for other people. So if you feel confident in the decisions you're making or want to make, then I think that's what you should do.
I think to piggyback off that is like, yeah, focus on your own journey. I loved how you were telling the story about when you were moving around and, you know, the person that was offering you the job said, you're not going to find anything better, right? And then you immediately knew that that was the right move. And I think that like, you're often going to be told that, you know, like someone who doesn't know what you're personally going through is going to tell you and dictate to you what your experience should be or what it is. And that's when you know, like, maybe I need to take a step back and maybe they aren't the person that I need to be going to for that resource or for that help. So yeah, focus on your own journey. I know that's easier said than done because there's messages, social media, television media, we're surrounded by messages of perfection and, you know, no one makes mistakes and everyone looks perfect at all times, which we know isn't the case. But try your best to surround yourself with great people, positive energy, people that are going to inspire you, people that want to see you win. Okay, there's going to be people that you surround yourself with that really don't truly want to see you win. So you need to kind of filter that out, filter out the noise, and focus on your own perspective and journey.
And you're still young. I mean, you have your whole life ahead of you to figure things out. So just take advantage of this time while you're young to figure out your future and how to navigate it.
I think there was another question in the back.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, awesome. I'm Chinanu. I'm a sophomore journalism major here. First of all, thank you again, all of you, for being here. My question really, I'm not blocking the camera here. My question, if there was one thing, and Tiana, I don't know if this would be as relevant to you because you're like 2 years removed from graduation, but if there was like one thing in the early stages of your career that you would go back to and you would do differently, what would it be and why?
Oh.
I think
Sorry, I don't want to put weight on it, but
I think for me, even though I'm so early, I think what I wish I really would have done in college was really spending the time to live in the moment as well. Like, I know that like part of my college experience was definitely altered by COVID. Like I lost my senior year and pretty much a good portion of my junior year as well. Like I spent 4 years in college, and I think from the start, as soon as I like started in college, I was always thinking about like, what's next? What's after college? What am I gonna do? If I change my major too many times, like I'm gonna be here forever. I need to figure out what I feel like there's such an expectation that like once you're 18 or once you're out of high school, you already know what you're gonna major in, or whether if you are in college or not, you already know what you're gonna do at your adulthood. But I really just wish I would have like taken the time and spent more moments just building community and kinship with my friends, or really just living outside of just like living in the present and just really enjoying college and those 4 years for what it was. Yeah, if I really would have done that, because I feel like I was just so bogging myself down with different internships, or always trying to do this, or also comparing myself to my peers who are also in journalism or doing this or that. It was just like a cycle, or just like an environment of toxicity. And yeah, like I just really wish, like, for all of you guys, like, college is important. Like, I'm not saying like don't slack or definitely study, but college is college, and you're only gonna have that once, so have fun, live a little, be silly. I wish I was silly more.
I would say, number one, stay in school. And if you are going to obtain your master's, I definitely recommend to continue, because for me, I attended school at night, and I have 2 more courses for my master's. So I did receive my graduate certificate in public relations, but then years after, I'm now obtaining my master's degree. I wish I would have just knocked it out. That's what I'm saying. Like, stay in school if you can afford it, continue with your master's degree.
I was going to ask, are you wanting to go into newspaper, television, radio? Do you know yet?
Oh, this is a convoluted answer.
No, that's okay. The only reason, that's
Okay.
okay. I would just say, like, just from the television perspective, I wish I would have stood up for myself more. I think when I was making $19,000 a year, I graduated in 2009 during the economic downturn. So like, there were a lot of my friends who did not find work. I moved back in with my parents the year after I graduated and worked at a law firm before I started working in television. And I just wish that, like, I took kind of like the first thing, and I wish in certain instances I would have just stood up for myself more as far as like the work hours. I didn't know that in California they had labor laws, and that I found out years later that my first station that I worked at was in violation of some very important labor laws in California. And a group of people that I worked with actually sued our station and won. I was not part of that lawsuit. So I missed out. But there were just instances that I look back and I'm like, there were probably things that I said yes to that I should have said no to. And if you're going into television or newspaper writing, know that you have the power to say no, because your voices are like even more necessary right now. So many people are getting out of the industry or changing and trying to figure out their work-life dynamic. So just stand up for yourself, and it is okay to say no or to question, just even ask questions. And I think when you graduate, sometimes you just like take the first thing and you don't even ask questions because you feel like, I just need a job, you know? So have confidence in yourself, and it's okay to say no, or to just ask, like, why do you want me to do that? Or, hey, that's actually not a part of what I'm supposed to be doing in my job responsibilities, you know? And see what they say, because you'd be surprised. They're not, you know, a lot of times people aren't used to being even questioned in that manner at such a young age. So that would be my advice.
Along the same line there, salary negotiation.
I was about to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I should have asked for more money.
Exactly.
I'm good at this. And I wish I'd known that at 21. You know, at 38, I can say I should have asked for more money from the jump. Like, they don't have a lot, but there is a base level expectation that you should have for yourself of how much it takes to live. And you deserve to be paid equitably for your job. You know, I was thinking I was so lucky to be there, but they're so damn lucky to have you, you know, because you make the newsroom look the way the community is supposed to look, and the outlooks that each person brings is what makes a newsroom. It's not just the narrative team or the investigative team, especially in print. Like in print, every single part, especially in print, you know? So yeah, I wish I'd negotiated. I should have asked for more.
One more question, but you always ask. That's one thing I learned later in life. You always ask, and especially with the money. All right, this is going to be our final question, folks, and then we are going to go into a light reception. It's an online question, and maybe if I can get one or two of you to respond to this. What is your advice to those who may have freelanced as journalists in their early career, and now they want to pursue journalism full-time? So how does one make the change from a freelance to journalism full-time?
I think if it's on, is it on air or print, did they say?
They did not say. Print? Print.
Oh, it is print that.
Yes, it's print.
Oh.
Okay, it was my question.
Hilarious.
So I emailed it to Melanie because I had so many. So I mean, I'll personalize it. So I'm Rachel, thank you guys so much for
Mike, please. It's for the people online. For the people online.
Do this. Is it on? Okay. So I got my master's in journalism, and I always knew that I wanted to get my doctorate in psychology, but I valued the skills that a journalist has, and I love it. I love being a communicator. I love writing. I love communicating all that stuff and reporting. But I miss it like crazy now that I'm like not doing it as much as I used to in a master's program, because either you're publishing or you're not doing anything. There's no grade if you don't publish. So I think that eventually I'm going to want to go back to being a journalist after I get my doctorate. I want to continue freelancing while I'm in my doctorate program. I just don't know how I'm going to get out and somehow do a U-turn back in.
But you're getting your doctorate?
I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to start next fall.
That's a powerful selling point right there, first of all. PhD, I mean, you see it on social media with people who, are contributors to newspaper articles, or you can even work for, depending on what your focus is, cable news. There's so many areas, but just the fact that what would your doctorate be in? In psychology. I mean, there's so many different ways you can pivot, and I think you being that doctor title gives you the skill set of saying, like, I'm an expert in this area, and that right there is gonna open doors for you, and especially if you have your writing samples and all of that prepared. I think you're setting yourself up already. I don't know, maybe you can add more.
Oh, I think you're
newspaper.
golden.
Yeah.
I think there's endless opportunities if you view psychology as the standpoint or the perspective that you take on any story, right? If they're looking for that specific clinical expertise, it's not just sort of you being a source. You do it better than they would, right? And so depending on what your interests are, depending on what's happening, whatever the news story is, if you already have the writing chops, like, pitch. And get the bag, right? Like they should pay you well for that.
I was just gonna say, like, a lot of times, at least at 7 News, we have law experts, or if there is, if there's something with a presidential political, slant, we'll have a political expert. But you might be able to be, from that psychology standpoint, be an expert in a certain realm. So you could even pitch yourself that way. So you could contribute, in your newspaper writing, but also, doing stuff on air too, and freelance.
Podcasting.
Yeah. And I think if you just reach out directly to the print publications that you might be interested in and just let them know what your desire is, maybe set up a meeting. A lot of times that can help too, just a 5-minute conversation or a Zoom, or just putting yourself out there and just letting your interest be known to whatever those companies or publications that you're interested in are.
And also, Rachel, you have the blessing of not being pinned to one outlet. Like, it can be many. It could be news, print, blogs. Like, the sky is your limit. There are no limits.
I was just going to add, so just to make sure, like, are you asking, like, how to just go back into the industry in general, or like how to pivot as a freelancer, like wanting to be like in a newsroom, like non-freelance or something like that?
It was more so.
Yeah.
Okay, it was.
It takes 3 seconds. Flip it up.
3 seconds. Great.
Yep.
All right. So yes, to specify my question, it was, how will I go back into the industry full time after being away for so long?
Yeah, like what I would just say, like even though I'm only starting out, what I've like really loved that I've seen some newsrooms do is they're creating fellowship opportunities for mid-career, or like people that may not be right out of college who are wanting to enter journalism, whether it's from like a doctoral program. Like I know that NPR hired someone who had gotten like a doctorate but wanted to just go into journalism, and so they were like a health expert where they got their doctorate, or they were studying health and medicine, but then they did this program with NPR where they were able to do all these rotations, and now they're a full-time producer reporting on COVID and reporting on health using their doctorate or their educational lens or their expertise. I would just say that I know that there are certain like places where they're hoping or they really see a need for people that are further along or not just jumping out of college just like me or other people here. So I would say just looking for those places. Those are definitely, I think, entryways for wanting to go back. And I think especially as someone who's done it before, that definitely gives you a leg up too. But I would say maybe looking for those, because I've seen those around. I think that's a really great thing that different newsrooms are trying to do.
Audience, thank you, ladies. Let's give them a huge round of applause. You ladies were excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Christella, Bria, Nicole, Tiana, and Amaka, thank you. We've got something special for you. So while that's coming up, there's some light refreshments outside. Enjoy yourselves and for about the next 30 minutes, but please around 8:45, start headed out. By 8:50, I don't know where you're going, but you gotta be out of here, okay? 8:50, I don't know where you're going, but you gotta be out of here. So come on, come on. We're gonna give you just a small gift, a token of appreciation for you all coming today and spending time with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
That was wonderful.
It's over there.